Well, let's talk about the origin of the Tibet issue, Dunjo. So why did the Tibet issue come into being? Why did the People's Liberation Army enter Tibet in the first place?
Yeah, that in the 1940s, in the situation, the political situation of Asia is very complicated, and the Tibetan also, especially Tibetan, inside Tibetan, in the Tibetan local government also has divided into two groups, and one group is pro this kind of Westerner foreign powers, and the other group is pro to mainland China. And then at the famous events they call the Reding and the Dagda event, that is the result of this foreign powers interfering Tibetan affairs that times 1940s. So then afterwards the new China is founded in 1949. Then this situation is bring to the foreign powers kicked out from whole China. So then Tibetan local government sent their representative to Beijing and to solve this Tibetan problem. Then at that time also, same time in Tibet, there's some foreign powers still existed there. So in order to solve these problems, then the PA marched to Tibet in the 1950s.
Actually, we know the 14th Dalai Lama actually wrote to the central government pledging his support and ratified the 17-point agreement that allowed the central authority over Tibet, but he reneged on the promises. Why did he do that?
So this is because of some this high-level officials. They challenge of their beneficiaries from this agreement, because the agreement, 17-point agreement, saying that in the future the old system of the Tibetan will be changed, and along with the whole China system is changed. So this will be taxed to the beneficiary of this old the social classes. So they don't agree to change this old society. So they later on they denied this agreement.
This is very important, because we'd like to know what the old system was like in Tibet, because many people, especially those people in the West, have an illusion that Tibet used to be a holy land, it's a pure land for everybody, has a freedom of speech. What kind of an institution is there?
Right. It's actually is not this pure land or this kind of very holy land is not existed at that time, because this is a society. There is a social system, even though this is old, but there is a social system. This is the feudal serfdom systems. So very dark and the backward systems at that time. Then 95% of the populations, there's no any rights to live. Even personal life is not guaranteed that time. So the 5% of the populations, they had all rights of this land, and even their slaves. Personal life is owned by this kind of high level rankings. So this is also in that time in the law, this making the law, in the law they also state that all this land and the persons belong to the landlord.
And Shimatsu, how much of the 1959 revolt was fueled by some foreign elements and forces? To what extent?
Well, like the Professor Tondop said, that there was a coup in 1947 against the Rajong faction, the destruction of one of the oldest monasteries, killing of hundreds of monks, and the assassination of the Dalai Lama's mentor. And so that began the British re-emergence in Tibet. And there were many gold shipments and that the Americans were sending in to buy off sections of the aristocracy. And I think what they found so objectionable about the 17-point agreement was a clause in which the Tibetan army was going to be incorporated into the People's Liberation Army. And I believe Chairman Mao's intention was that was necessary to recover the territorial integrity of the Tibetan plateau. I mean, the British had taken vast section of Tibet away in something called with the McMahon Line, which is now the state of Arunachal Pradesh, which is known as Tawang to the Tibetans.
Which is still disputed between China and India.
Exactly,
right?
exactly. And this is why that clause of the 17-point agreement is the Tibetan army had no ability to roll back the Western forces there, and they would have to work jointly with the Chinese forces to recover that, just like China was trying to recover Taiwan, Hong Kong, and other areas at the time. That was part of the program of national liberation. So we have to understand this is what the Western powers found so objectionable, and they were pumping money and weapons into Tibet to do anything to protect the McMahon line, the old colonial boundary.
We know the 14th Dalai Lama has always projecting a very successful image of being a spiritual leader, a guru of some kind, but actually he and his followers has been playing political games in Dharamsala all the time. His representatives have been talking with the central government, but to no progress so far. What is the reasons behind the failed talks?
This, of course, we have tried several times to happen these talks, but because of the other side, the exile side, they are not really accepted what the mainland, the central government says that this talk have to one condition, that is the Tibetans. The part of China, and they cannot talk about the independence of the Tibet. But the other side, the exile, they all the times they saying this kind of Tibetan independent, and also the fully economic of the Tibetan plateau. So this actually is the kind of independent of Tibet. So because of this, then the talk is failed.
Yuchi, what do you think?
Well, there's been an evolution, I think, in the Dalai Lama's position, to be fair. I think, there's been very rough periods in which...
So he has been adaptive.
Right, there's been 25 years of guerrilla war that lasted into the 70s, which, things were very fractious. Tibetans were killing Chinese. Very terrible period in the CIA-supported war. Then there was a period of detente in the 80s with the beginning of the Deng Xiaoping era. And if you remember, many of the Dalai Lama's relatives visited Tibet. And it was a very wonderful reblossoming of Tibetan religion and culture. And then there were the problems at about the time of the Dalai Lama's Nobel Prize award, in which many of the so-called Western human rights groups were trying to push the Tibetan movement into confrontation with China. And now that the Dalai Lama, I think this is the new phase, that he's retired as head of the exile government and focusing more on the religious affairs of the Gelugpa order, because he has to think of his own reincarnation, how to deal with the Panchen Lama in Tashi Lumpo and in Lhasa, that I think he's beginning to try to depoliticize and defuse all these political tensions. And I think this should be welcome, that he's finally seen that what's important is not the survival of the old theocracy, but the survival of his own order, which is under extreme competition from the 4 other Tibetan Buddhist groups, which are doing much better than his own.
So he's got his own problems there. Well,